Hey everyone. So today's topic, I have been hesitant about saying, okay, this is what we're talking about today because it's controversial, I think, and it's something that people get heated talking about, and so I try and avoid that, I think. But I've been asked, so should we bring our kids to the visitation? Should we bring them to the funeral home? Should we bring them to the funeral? Should kids be part of the whole experience? And by kids today, I'm talking mostly like, 2 to maybe 10-year-olds. Your mindset definitely changes during those years, but I think that's kind of the area, maybe more 2 to 8 is about where I'm talking about, where mentally, where they kind of deal with things and how they react to the situations. But, if you look at the picture I posted on Facebook of JFK's funeral, so what if someone had gone to Jackie O and said, Jackie, it's going to be better for your kids not to be part of all of this, not to be part of the media storm, not to be part of the funeral because it's just better for them. Just leave them at home with a nanny or something. And she had done that. So what would be the iconic photo from that day? If it wasn't little John Jr. saluting the casket that day and so forth. So some of these, pivotal, huge iconic moments that the kids at the funeral was a huge part of it. We wouldn't have that. So I wonder what would have been the important picture from that day. So I think this is really important, especially right now, and it's hard for people to want to listen to or to talk about because I think no parent wants to be told how to parent. Even though this is a situation where you don't know how to parent your kid for the most part when it comes to taking them to funerals because you yourself probably don't know what to do going to the funeral home. A lot of young adults, a lot of adults have never been to funerals, have never been to funeral homes. So how do you even know how to deal with your child in that situation if you yourself are not comfortable with that situation or don't know how to deal with it? And I think especially right now too, we're dealing with a time where the rise of young widow and widowers is happening, where we have a rash of 30 to 40-year-old men dying of heart attacks for whatever reason. And we're seeing this happening all the time. So we have all these 30 to 40-year-old women with younger kids that are having to make these decisions about, do I bring my kids to the funeral home to see their dad, and dealing with that. And on the vice versa, a lot of women between 30 and 40 dying of cancers more now than ever. And so all these young fathers taking care of their kids, deciding, do I bring them to the funeral home? And trying to make those decisions. So it's, I think, new questions, new people dealing with those situations than ever before. So the answer is yes, bring the kids. And this is something I really don't think I am ever going to waver on. I don't really think there's a situation where I think I'm really ever going to change my mind on this because I have seen so many times the power of bringing kids to the funeral home to see people, to be part of things. Now, the arrangement conference I've mentioned before, not the best time to have little kids there. They're too busy and can't sit still and are too distracting. Visitation, yes, bring the kids during that family time, especially if it's a family member. Let them be part of that. Let them see the person. But don't keep them there the whole time. What kid is going to sit still and behave for 3 to 4 hours in a really boring room and building? There may be a kid's room to entertain them during that time. But still, you are so distracted by greeting people and seeing people that you can't really care for your kid who's now running around the building because they're so bored. So make a plan that maybe an in-law or a friend can pick your child up and take them for the rest of that time so you can be present, not worrying about your kid, but that your kid can also take part in things with you. And then funeral, that's really up to you. Is your kid old enough to sit during a church service for an hour and pay attention without being too distracting? Great question. Only you are going to know some of that answer. So whether they need to be part of the actual funeral is up to you. It depends on their age and yeah, just you're going to know that answer, because they're probably not going to get as much out of the funeral service itself as just that visitation time and that family time together. So I have a whole bunch of notes that I'm going to try and hit on, because there wasn't really a layout that was best to talk about these things. So being there during that visitation and that family, kind of that family viewing time per se, so important. So your kids, you're going to bring them to a wedding. You're going to bring them to a birthday. You're going to bring them to all those events where they get to see your family laughing and joyful together. And they're going to get to see that, oh, when our family celebrates, we celebrate all together and get to support each other. So at the funeral home where you're bringing everyone together, that you're sad and you want to rely on each other and you want to hug and you want to just love and you want to cry and you want to share memories and you want to do all that, why aren't you showing them that you should do that together as well? Great question. You know, why would you leave them out of that? Because they obviously know something is going on. So especially if it's, you know, one of your parents, if that has died, or brothers and sisters, you know, a close family member, there's going to be family members coming into town, and there's going to be special dinners and special things, but everybody's going to be crying. Like, they know something is up. Let them in on it. Let them be part of what you're doing together as a family. They're not going to be on the same level as you, and that's okay, because you are feeling things completely different than a child is going to feel things. And I'll talk about that more here in just a little bit, but let them be part of it with the family. Show them that you do sad, you do rough, you do those harder moments together as well as doing the happy moments. So kids taking on death, you know, we learn what we think about funerals and funeral homes and death from our family and from how we were raised. So if you have this insane fear of the funeral home or of touching dead people, you probably learned some of that from your parents or somebody that you were around when you were younger. And it's maybe from some fears that you got when you were younger that just were planted in you by a scary story at school, or by that, oh, we're driving by the cemetery, pick up your feet because you don't want a spirit to get into you, that you do on a bus on the way to sporting events. I can't be the only one who had that happening when I was younger. But all those things when you're younger, they just plant these seeds in your mind that grow and they grow and they grow into fears and being scared of that emotion also. So kids don't have that. You can say, hey, we're going to the funeral home, hey, we're going to the grocery store, and to them it's the same thing. I mean, they're just going to wonder if they get a donut or a cookie at the funeral home too, because to them they don't know any emotion really attached to that place yet. They just know you're going someplace else, and they don't have this fear of that, the sadness that you're going to get when you go there and what is actually happening there. So they also don't understand the concept of that forever. So when you tell them somebody's gone forever, they don't know what that means. You know, they barely know what it means for there to be an hour or a week. You know, if I tell my daughter that, hey, I'm going to be gone for 10 minutes, Mom, that's a long time. You know, 10 minutes is a long time. What is forever? No idea. Kids they can't grasp those time concepts. So saying grandma is gone forever, they don't understand that, and you can't get them to, because they don't have that big full picture of life and the world and everything, and you can't teach them that either. They also don't have that concept of what death means, you know, that you know, your heart has stopped and your mind has stopped, and that person that's within you that makes you that person is separated and is gone, but that body's still there. Kind of like saying, well, that spirit has gone to heaven. Well, what the heck? What is heaven, and where is it, and what does that even mean? And you can tell a kid, but they don't understand that completely. You know, they listen and they take some of it in, and maybe bits and pieces catch on, but having that full picture, they don't totally get it. I mean, I'm an adult and talking about heaven, I still want to know exactly where that place is because I'm such a tangible person. I like tangibility. So you talk about heaven, like, okay, show me where heaven is. So I can't imagine trying to explain to a child heaven. And we've tried. My 3-year-old, she is quite inept, and she asks questions that I don't even have as an adult. And trying to explain things to her and answer them, it just goes over my mind. So trying to understand that mind of a kid, we can't do it as an adult. You know, we can't take ourselves back to that place. So I'm going to paint a little picture of what a lot of families do and a lot of parents do. So they'll come in and they'll say, you know, my son's just not acting right, and he either cries a lot at one moment, or he's angry another moment, and I don't quite know what's going on, you know, like, what's going on? Because a lot of times people come in and will say, well, how's things going? How's the family? And so they'll say this and say, well, remind me again, how long's it been since your mom died? Oh, it's been about a month. Okay. So, you know, he's maybe reacting to that. Well, we didn't bring him to anything. We didn't bring him to the funeral home. We didn't bring him to the visitation. You know, we thought it was better for him if we didn't bring him to anything. We thought that it would be easiest for him if he wasn't part of any of it. You know, we were sheltering him, essentially, without saying the word. Okay, so you've been upset, you were emotional, but your child didn't get to see why. The actual, like, didn't get to come and see grandma and see where it was. Okay, so what did you tell your son? Well, that grandma's just gone. So, in a way, what this parent has done is said, you know, little Bob, or whatever your name is, little Bobby, grandma's left. She's gone to heaven. You might as well tell the kid that grandma's gone to, you know, Alabama, because they don't quite know where that is. And so they just think grandma basically packed up her car and left them. You know, a kid's world is this small with the people that they know and they love. They have like their 2 little best friends, and they have their toys in their room, and they have their family. And when you take one of those important people that's in their family away, they just know that somebody's left them, and it hurts because they don't understand why they left. Did they leave because of them? Did they not love them anymore? These are questions that kids ask themselves because they don't understand what is going on, and it's something you can't even explain to them in whole. And then when you try to explain heaven, they don't know where that place is and why they're there. So it's hard, and I know some people they'll say, well, we took them to the cemetery though. We showed them where grandma is. You know, we told them that her spirit went to heaven and that we buried her body. So can you imagine being a kid? Think about it from a kid's perspective, going to a cemetery and telling a kid that their grandma is in a box under the ground. Does grandma have a TV down there? Does she get to eat? Is it dark? Is she alone? Is she cold? Is she scared? These are all common things that run through a kid's head, and they may not say them out loud because they don't know if they're allowed to. But imagine those vantage points to a child. That's scary, and that's hard because they don't understand it, and you didn't give them the opportunity to understand it. So now you take a kid and you bring them with you to the funeral home, and they get to see the family all being together and crying and laughing and looking at pictures, and they're you know, kind of seeing what's going on with everybody and what everybody's feeling. And then they get to see grandma, and they get to see her in a casket, and they get to see her dressed, and sometimes she may look good, sometimes she may not. It depends on if she'd been sick, and if they had seen her failing health, or if she was in a car accident. You know, it all just depends. But I'm going to go from best case scenario. You know, she looks nice, she's in this casket, and he gets to see, hey, there's grandma. She looks okay, but she's not quite grandma. And process it from there. Most kids, and I will tell you, and it still shocks families when I preface and tell them to bring children to the funeral home, and they bring them, and the kids come in, and they go up to the casket, and they peek, and they look, and they try and look down for the feet. It's just a very common thing. Where's her feet? Where is his feet? And they just kind of look, and then the parents will say, are you okay? Are you sad? You know, And then the kid will be like, I'm fine. And they run away and they go play and they want to see their cousins and they want to go, hug their other family and they want to go play with their iPad and they want to go do whatever is normal for them. It's kind of a blip on their radar when it happens. Whereas as adults, it's not a blip. It's a flatten us right down, stop the world around us and stop everything else from happening because it's catastrophic. Where for a kid, it's just a blip right then. And that blip's going to keep coming back to them over time, but it's not as catastrophic as it is for us as adults. And until you see it, you don't believe that. And they may cry and they're going to feed off the emotion in the room and they're going to look at pictures, but they're going to also at least have seen the person and see that what makes them them is not actually there anymore. And they actually react so much better than we do as adults. So, kids do react. As I was saying kind of in that painting the picture, kids will react maybe differently later because they don't know how to tell you exactly. Maybe they're sad, but a month, 2 months later, they may just be having a couple bad days where you can't quite figure out why. Everything's going good at school, everything's going good at home, but they haven't seen grandma in a couple months and they miss her. But you told them that she's dead and they saw her or they didn't see her, whichever the situation, and so they kind of react in poor ways. They may get angry, they may draw some pictures that you don't quite understand, they may ask you some questions that you don't know where they're coming from, but that's just kids because they put it aside and move on to the next. I mean, think about your kid asking you questions, your kindergartner asking you questions. They go from like one extreme to the other. Within a 5-minute period, you may have been asked questions about 20 different topics because their minds are just all over the place and every question that comes to mind just comes out. There's no filter almost. And that's the same way with the funeral home questions and death questions. You could just be sitting at the dinner table and you're talking about your day and he's talking about, hey mom, I went on the biggest slide on the playground today. So Mom, remember that cemetery place that we went to that one time? You told me Grandma was underground. Is she down there by herself or are her toes cold? And then they're going to move on to now where we have an ice cream for dinner. And that's literally exactly how that conversation could go because they don't know any different. They don't know the gravity and the weightiness to those questions, if that's a word, that they have. And you are on the floor because they just threw out the word cemetery and grandma and dead in the middle of dinner and you were not prepared for that. But to them it's okay. So it's knowing those questions may come and being able to react to them a little less shocked than you might if you don't know that they could pop up anytime. I think a big, huge thing to do is try not to preface going to the funeral home with your thoughts. So the funeral home might be scary, and it is scary. It's scary if you have to go to the funeral home because of that emotion and because of everything. But telling your kid, okay, we're going to the funeral home, hey Linda, and it's a scary place, your kid's scared already. And they didn't even see or talk or do anything that they know could be scary. But you've told them and prefaced it with, this is a horrible, scary place. Let them figure it out for themselves. Let them figure out if it's scary or if it's just a sad place. That's hard to go to. And that's okay because it exists and death happens and it's sad and it's hard. But don't let them feel it's scary because you feel it's scary. That's not fair to them to put that in their minds and in their hearts before they even feel that. Don't make them scared of seeing their grandma or whoever it is you're going to see, because grandma's not scary. Just because she's dead now doesn't make her scary. She is still grandma. She is still the cookie making wonderful person in their hearts and in their minds, and telling them it's scary and that they tie it all together, and you don't want them to make that into that kind of a mindset by telling them those things. Don't ever tell your kid that the person is sleeping. Oh, grandma's just sleeping. She's okay, she's sleeping. So now every time somebody goes to sleep for real, your kid's going to wonder if they're never waking up and never coming back to them. See the correlation? It's not a good one. So your kid's going to be terrified then of people, not every kid, but that's how they associate it. Dad was sleeping. Now, what if Mom goes to sleep and she doesn't come back to me either? Yeah, that is terrifying. That is scary. So some of these things that I think have just been typical to say to kids over time have been not good things to say to kids. So another thing that I wrote down, so I'd like to ask this question. If you plan, or grandparents, if you plan to be cremated and have no services, nothing's happening, nobody's seeing me, I'm getting cremated, we're done. It's just easier on everybody, no big deal, just move on with your lives, I'm dead. So who is that easy for? Because losing you out of somebody's life is going to be hard for them, unless you value yourself so little you don't think it's going to be hard on anybody. But obviously you do, because you want to care for those people because they care for you. So just omitting yourself and getting yourself out of the picture doesn't make you being gone any less hard, especially on those little kids that you love on and you've spent so much time with and you've helped, care for and joined in with for birthday parties and Christmas and every other special moment. It's going to be hard on them. So not seeing you ever again and just you being gone doesn't make it any easier. So put them into consideration when you're making your choices, and go back and watch my cremation video about why people need to see you before your body is cremated, because I think that's just really important. Giving kids an outlet. So especially if you don't have that viewing or that funeral or something, like having a special grandma dinner. So let's say your grandma or somebody important in your lives, I keep going back to grandma, but it's a good example, was cremated. They didn't have a service because that was their choices, didn't have a thing, and you are even feeling a little lost and your kids are feeling lost. So just say, you know what, we're going to have a special grandma night. Let's make grandma's favorite dinner. Let's look at some grandma pictures. Let's pick out a movie that the kids maybe always like to watch with grandma, and let's watch it together, and let's talk about why it was important to grandma. Let's color her pictures. Let's, release some balloons. Let's go to her favorite restaurant. Let's do her favorite thing. Stopping and reflecting on the fact that somebody is absent from your life from now on, and kind of just celebrating them even though they're not there, is yourself having your own memorial for them. So even if they didn't have anything else, or you couldn't be there for what they had, or you didn't want your child to be there, do something with your kid to memorialize that person, to make them important, and to stop and reflect on that loss. Because that's what all of it is about, is stopping and acknowledging that life has changed and will not be the same, and that you can't just carry on as it was before, and you want to reflect and you want to celebrate who they were with your kids, and have a moment, have even an hour that you do for that person. It's very important. And check in with your kids and see how they're doing. And you don't have to, every week say, okay, how are you feeling about grandma dying? Are you feeling good this week? Or are you sad this week? But just checking in how they're doing in general, because you're going to notice if you're talking to your kids often that, if they're having a bad week, and if it's not to do with school, then it might just be, they might be sad about something, and it might be grandma, and, there's just, things affect kids differently than they do us, just because they do. So, because a lot of times, like I said, what they infer about death and about loss is what they get from us. So, many books are available. I hate to go to that. Read a book, get a resource, but there are a lot of books. There's a lot of coloring books for kids that are available, that talk about funerals, that, this is a casket and this is a cemetery, and allow you to at least have a little conversation maybe before somebody dies. I'm going to show you one of my favorites. So, okay, this is Sesame Street. Has a episode that's about somebody in the community of Sesame Street dying, and there's a book that goes along with it, and it's awesome. If your kids love Elmo, especially as much as my daughter went through a total Elmo phase and, you know, listened to him like he was the only person in the whole world. And this is amazing. So if you go on, some funeral homes will have these. It's like a whole little booklet and it comes with a disc and everything. But if you just go to Sesame Street's website and in the search engine you type in grief or families grieving, it's called When Families Grieve, and you can download the video and you can download the whole book. So you don't have to actually get the packet. So say, you know, it's been maybe 6 months since somebody died, or you maybe weren't at the funeral home, or they didn't offer something like that. You totally have that resource at your hands whenever you want it. And I think this is such an important one because it puts the talk of death and about losing somebody on the level of kids, in the words, in the mouths of someone that they will want to listen to. And that's Elmo, and that's the people of Sesame Street, and so forth. So I think that was really important. I think just don't let your fear overshadow your kids' needs, because they don't know what their needs are. So don't guess what they are, and don't, you know, you can't say, do you want to go to the funeral home? Your kid's gonna be like, I'd rather sit at home and watch, you know, Wiggles or whatever, or watch Paw Patrol, or I don't know, whatever is important to your kid. You know, they're going to always choose that over going to a funeral home because they don't know what's there. They don't know if there's anything awesome and fun. And especially if you're crying and you don't want to go, they don't want to go there. So, you know, don't let that overshadow, and don't also let your inability to deal with a situation not allow you to bring your children to deal with that situation also. So if it's hard for you to go and you're barely keeping your crap together, don't not bring your child because you don't feel like you can care for them because you can barely care for yourself, I guess is the best way to put it. Because that happens, you know, where if it's a super hard, horrible loss, it's easy to leave your child out because you don't even know how to handle them because you can't handle yourself. I think one situation, we had a young mom. The gentleman was about 35 and he killed himself. And I can't imagine dealing with that loss of your spouse in that situation anyway, but she had 2 young kids. I think they were like 3 and 5 or something like that. I could easily have seen her just not bringing them because she couldn't deal with that situation, let alone have them deal with that situation. And I will remember the day clear as can be. She brought them in to see him, just her and these 2 little girls, to see him before he was cremated because it was important. And you know, nobody had to tell her that. She just knew it. And I cannot imagine that strength that she had to have in order to do that, to care for those kids, to care for herself, to do what she was doing. Like, it's amazing. It's amazing to me what you can do when you're in this situation, because guess what? You can never know what you're going to do until that moment's there. You don't know what it's like to lose your spouse until your spouse is gone. You don't know what it's like to lose a child until your child is gone. You can't even imagine what those emotions are until you're in it. And what you feel is not going to be anything like what somebody else is feeling. So that's a side little spiel, but and bringing the kids to the funeral home is also, it's awesome when people bring their kids to the funeral home and you watch everybody else reacting to those children being there. Especially like the little ones, when there's babies and when there's little 1-year-olds toddling around, just, you know, laughing. And it's just, it lightens your heart. It lightens the whole moment. You get that whole circle of life aspect in front of you that, you know, people die, but there's also life within the family. And it just is a rejuvenating moment having those kids around for families when they're there. And, you know, there's some cultures that we see that the kids are always there. Like, it's not an option. It's not an option to not bring the kids. I see it a lot in Hispanic communities. Like, your kids are there. The whole family comes. Everything, the whole family is there. Like, you don't have somebody else take care of the kids in that family from what I have seen. helping Hispanic communities, and also a lot of Native American families as well. You know, it's a generational respect thing, and so you always come to respect the elders, and the kids are always part of everything. And that's just not the case with every community and every church and every group of people. So I like to see that within some churches and within some cultures, and it's really cool. It's really cool to see that. You don't have to ever convince them to get their kids in and be involved, because it's part of who they are and it's part of what they do. So my last little tidbit, I think, on my rant about this whole thing is that your kids get one chance at saying goodbye to somebody. You know, that person, that body is not going to be there after another day once that funeral's done. And so, you know, don't take that chance away from your kids, because you can't ever give it back to them. And so it's just rethink and really assess what you're deciding about those moments and what you want to do. So if you have any other questions about this, obviously just message me. This is one thing I am super passionate about and super focused on. Does the funeral home have babysitting so I can visit and not pay attention to that? Well, I have not seen a funeral home that has a specific babysitting, no. You know, I wonder if you get into like a bigger city, if maybe you could bring in a babysitter. You know, if let's say there's a bunch of cousins and you all have younger kids and maybe you want to bring them, and then they do have a room at the funeral home, hire a babysitter. Somebody has to have a babysitter in that town that you could pay to come and to watch those children. Because a lot of times what will happen is you have the nice older person, you know, an 80-year-old nice retired guy working the front door, and you have 10 4, 5, 6-year-old kids running around the building throwing crayons and doing all sorts of things because there's no parents paying attention to them. Not a good situation, you know. So it's also a good thing to bring your kids there to teach them etiquette about how to act at a funeral home. And I've seen some really bad parenting going on at funeral homes. I had kids doing WWE, jumping off of couches, jumping onto coffee tables at funeral homes. You know, it blows my mind. But yes, good question. You know, funeral homes, I don't know of any that have that as a service that they offer, but I'm sure if you said, hey, could you find somebody, that they could find somebody that could come in and help to tend to children for a fee for a couple hours. But a lot of funeral homes might be near a park. If it's a nice day, you know, that maybe somebody could take the kids to the park or something. So a lot of different options. But hopefully this answers questions and didn't piss too many people off. So I will talk to you guys soon.